Part 31. I Can See the Laws of Things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 301. What's going on? My spiritual energy was restored instantly. Chen Daoming couldn't help but lost his voice. How is this possible? Even for a world-class Dharma god, it will take some time to fully recover after the spiritual energy in his body is exhausted. This is not to mention the demigod above the Dharma god. While the spiritual energy has increased many times, the difficulty of recovering it has also increased many times. But this is only a moment. Even less than a breath. This exhausted spiritual energy was directly restored. Even if you eat a lot of treasures to restore spiritual energy at one time, it can't achieve such a weird effect. Gilug. Chen Daoming's Adam's apple rolled up and down, and after he swallowed a mouthful of saliva, he spoke with a stuttering tone. Did Lin do it? In his mind, he could only think of such a guess. And Chen Daoming's intuition told him that this guess was correct. The transfer of spiritual energy in the entire world is still continuing. As time went by, the spiritual energy in other parts of the world began to become scarce. The moment the spiritual energy is generated, 90% of it will be directly gathered into the Kyushu territory by Lin An's spiritual gathering array. Lin An tore open the space channel and returned to the Tree of Life. He looked down at the Kyushu territory. You can clearly see the aura filled with this Juzhu domain. These spiritual energies have filled every corner. It can be said that the only thing that is not lacking in the entire Juzhu domain now is spiritual energy. After the conditions for cultivation are created, the next thing to do is to start practicing. Lin An turned his head and said to the half-dream in the room behind him. Ban Meng, go and tell everyone in the Kyushu domain. Let them enter a state of full cultivation. Ban Meng walked out of the house with a serious look on his face, nodded heavily to Lin An, and replied. Clear. After saying that, Ban Meng left the top of the Tree of Life and began to perform the tasks assigned to her by Lin An. At the same time, at the mysterious volcano group extremely far away from the Kyushu territory, Lucifer was waving the 12 black wings behind him, looking at the surrounding environment with an extremely serious expression. His brows were frowning tightly at this moment, and his dark eyes were staring at the spiritual energy that was being rapidly withdrawn from the entire space. As these spiritual energies quickly left, Lucifer also looked in the direction of the Kyushu territory. The next moment, he felt a very familiar aura that he would never forget forever and belonged only to Lin An. Immediately after his throat came out, there were waves of hot dryness, and an extremely strong fear appeared in his dark eyes for a moment. It's him. This is the aura of the world. Now they are all gathered in the same place. Even after living for such a long time, he had never seen it before. Someone can control the aura of the entire world by himself. Under the nourishment of this almost substantial spiritual energy, a pig can fly into the sky. Gilug. The globs of saliva were swallowed by Lucifer, so his dry throat got some relief. His 2 arms hanging beside his body were held together quietly, so much so that even his nails pierced into the flesh. But he didn't react at all. He just looked in the direction of Lin An in the Kyushu domain with a solemn gaze that he had never seen before. Well. After a long time, Lucifer sighed heavily. No matter how many times I calculated, I still didn't realize it. In this last era, such an existence would appear. Just one person can suppress eternity by himself. As long as he is around, I want to take this world away. It has become something that is simply impossible. Lucifer's whole demon seemed a little disappointed, the fear in his eyes became more intense, and his arms were already covered with goosebumps. He now knows very well that with these defeated troops at hand, it is impossible to compete for global hegemony in this last era of the world. If you do it recklessly, you are destroying yourself. He slowly looked away from the Juzhu territory. Then he turned his head and looked at the demons behind him. The direct voice spoke coldly and ordered. The whole army obeys the order. From now on, no one is allowed to leave here without my order. If anyone dares to disobey this order, then I will kill him with my own hands. After giving the order, Lucifer flapped his wings and returned directly to the small world of hell, closed his eyes and started practicing. The 5 hell demon kings, watching Lucifer's leaving figure, couldn't help but look at each other, with disbelief in each other's eyes. Lord Lucifer would actually make such a decision. This is completely different from the Lord Lucifer I know. The extraction of spiritual energy from all over the world is still going on. The spiritual energy contained in the Pacific Ocean is also leaving rapidly. And this situation alarmed a powerful man from the old era who was sleeping in the Pacific Ocean. The deepest part of the Pacific Ocean is an abyss with no bottom. Boom! At this moment, a loud explosion-like sound came from the bottom of the abyss. The space in the abyss shattered and collapsed, and countless sea water began to disappear. In just a blink of an eye, the sea level of the Pacific Ocean dropped by several meters. I, the demon god of the abyss, completely awake. A roar filled with madness echoed in the sky above the entire Pacific Ocean. The next moment, the sea surface was set off by huge waves, and huge whirlpools of ocean currents swallowed everything. The white clouds in the sky dissipated, a large amount of space was broken, and a huge hole appeared. Countless marine creatures all exploded at this moment, dyeing a large area of the ocean red. As for what happened in the deepest part of the Pacific Ocean, Lin En was not aware of it for the time being. He just closed his eyes and guarded the top of the tree of life, entering a state of cultivation. In the Zhuzhou area, all the people who had free time entered a state of cultivation when they knew the order issued by Lin En. Everyone knew that the catastrophe was coming, and no one could be immune. Chen Daoming and others increased the speed of building the Zhuzhou area with abundant spiritual energy. And the 5,000 people who learned the knowledge of formations and prohibitions put in 12 points of energy and began to carve one powerful formation and prohibition after another. At the same time, the abyss demon god who had completely awakened from the abyss of the Pacific Ocean also began his action. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 302. At the peak of the world's highest mountain range, there are several small worlds suspended. The small world is resplendent, and the holy light envelops the whole world. Countless angels waving their white wings are busy in this small world. In the center of this small world, there is a golden castle. This residence belongs to Lucifer's archenemy in the age of gods and demons, the Holy Spirit, who is the ruler of heaven. But at this moment, the sky of this small world suddenly shattered, and a huge gap appeared. The Holy Spirit, who had his eyes tightly closed, suddenly opened them. He waved his wings and left the castle, looking towards the collapsed sky. I saw endless enemies emerging from the gap in space, and large tracts of space were constantly collapsing. Holy Spirit looked at the one at the front of these enemies, his pupils suddenly widened, and he said in shock, "Demon of the abyss, what are you going to do?" At this time, the abyss demon god also looked at the Holy Spirit, with a sneer on his lips. "Of course. Kill you." The next moment, the body of the abyss demon god appeared next to the Holy Spirit. At the same time, the abyss demon god raised a hand and pinched it toward the Holy Spirit. The endless space began to break again, and the powerful magic energy directly wrapped the Holy Spirit. Bang! The Holy Spirit's body was torn apart, and then the broken space directly swallowed his body. In the blink of an eye, only his head was left. All this happened too suddenly. The Holy Spirit was in an extremely passive state, and he had not even reacted yet. The abyss demon god grabbed the remaining head of the Holy Spirit in his hands and looked at the Holy Spirit cruelly. The Holy Spirit's face was full of doubts. He looked at the demon god of the abyss angrily and scolded. "Demon of the abyss, are you crazy? You and I are both perfecters of the law, kill me now." You won't be able to survive when the great collapse comes. The Holy Spirit thought that after saying these words, the abyss demon god would calm down. Ha ha ha. But who knew that the demon god of the abyss would actually look up to the sky and laugh? Holy Spirit, you are so ignorant. The supplement plan doesn't need so many participants at all. The hunting game has begun countless years ago. As long as you kill the opponent who is also a completer, you can get the laws that the opponent possesses. The Holy Spirit's eyes stared hard, and these golden eyes were filled with shock that could not be dissipated at this moment. What? How so? He simply couldn't believe that such a thing would happen. Since becoming a completer, he has even put aside his hatred with Lucifer. But now, the appearance of the abyss demon god made him feel at a loss. At this time, the abyss demon god spoke again. All the completers will awaken in this final era. The purpose is for us to kill each other and create the final completer. All other completers are just nutrients for the final completer. Even the ancient mighty who launched this plan has been killed by a certain completer. After saying this, the smile on the face of the abyss demon god became more sinister. He looked at the Holy Spirit with murderous intent in his eyes, and said with a cruel smile, "We have been enemies from the beginning. So when I kill you, I'm just doing what I should do." After saying that, the abyss demon god squeezed the hand of Holy Spirit's head hard. Click. The head of the Holy Spirit turned into countless powders. The law of space, the law of magic energy, the law of light. After becoming a completer with 3 laws, you will have the power to protect yourself even when facing those with multiple laws. But this is not enough, I need more laws. Next, the abyss demon god led his army and shattered all the small worlds of the Holy Spirit. Heaven is now completely destroyed. He doesn't care whether these small worlds have any value. In the abyss where he sleeps, there are 1,000 small abyss worlds. After wiping out heaven, the demon god of the abyss stood on the top of the highest mountain. At this moment, he clearly felt that the spiritual energy around him was extremely thin and was all converging towards one place. When he first woke up, he felt that the aura of the world was a little strange, but due to the state at that time, he didn't know what the reason was. Now that the Holy Spirit was eliminated and his perception was completely restored, he was finally aware of the huge spiritual energy whirlpool in the Xuanhuan territory. Even the abyss demon god, who was in an extremely excited state, his eyes widened uncontrollably, with a strong look of shock in his eyes. The aura there. It's so rich. Holy place. There is a holy place for cultivation. For practitioners, it is a real paradise. The spiritual energy inside is so rich that it is about to turn into a physical entity. This last era is an era when spiritual energy is exhausted. Now there is such a place with extremely rich spiritual energy. Unbelievable. Could it be that a certain multi-law complementer awakened and forcibly created such a place? This method is beyond belief. Looking in the direction of Xuanhuan, a strong greed flashed in the eyes of the abyss demon god, and even his heart beat faster. He slowly pulled out a fanatical smile from the corner of his mouth, and said excitedly, "No matter who the enemy is, we must seize this holy land." Even the spiritual energy when the world was first formed was not as rich as this. The environment where those ancient great powers practiced is not much different from that place. Occupying that place means occupying an absolute advantage. After a few seconds, the abyss demon god retracted his gaze towards Xuanhuan. He then looked in another direction, and a sneer appeared on his face again. But before that, let's kill the dormant little mouse first. Law of darkness, Lucifer. The next moment, the abyss demon god raised his hands, and a large space was directly torn apart. He walked into it with the huge army behind him. At the same time, the edge of Xuanhuan domain was greatly blessed by spiritual energy. Whether it is the construction of Xuanhuan domain or the depiction of formations and prohibitions, it has entered a stage where work can be stopped. Many people have returned to Zhu domain. Lin En stood on the top of the Tree of Life, looking at the formations hidden under the surface of Zhu domain. After distributing the resources, Chen Daoming also returned here. He looked a little relaxed and said to Lin En, "Now Zhu domain has been fully armed. Even if some awakened strongmen come here, they have the power to resist." You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 303. But Lin En just nodded calmly. He looked at the ground below and said in a calm voice, "The only flaw is that the power of these formations and restrictions is a little small. At most it can only hit some enemies." After saying that, Lin En also turned around and looked at Chen Daoming. "I will tell you all about how to use these formations and restrictions. It's up to you to decide when to turn it on depending on the situation." But Chen Daoming just looked firm, nodded heavily, and agreed to Lin En. "Good. I see. When it's time to use it, I will activate these formations directly." But there were waves of doubts in his heart. The power of these formations that Lin En mentioned was a bit weak. Just how small? The Tree of Life has been by Lin's side since it took root towards the center of the earth. Naturally, she also heard the conversation between Lin En and Chen Daoming. Immediately when she looked at Lin En, her eyes became a little weird, and even the corners of her mouth couldn't help but twitch. She even wondered if she heard it wrong. What? 9 Heavens Purple Thunder Formation. The raging flames burn the sky. Amber Dream Formation. Any one of these formations, placed in the Age of Fairies, would be a formation with huge deterrent power. Even the so-called powerful Dharma gods and martial gods in this era, after the activation of this grand formation, they will all be killed instantly. But now Lin En actually said that these formations are weak. In the entire fairy era, no one dared to say that. Is it possible that there are only those formations that can directly kill demigod-level experts? Can I get Lin En's approval? The Tree of Life looked at Lin En with dull eyes, and she couldn't help but said, "Powerful, little power." At this moment, Lin En turned his head, looked at the Tree of Life indifferently, and slowly said, "Isn't it?" The Tree of Life didn't know how to respond for a moment. She just looked at Lin En with a dull expression and her eyes unblinking. Also, that's right. For Lin En, those powerful men at the level of Dharma God and Martial God are really just like ants. There are only enemies like Lucifer. Only then are you qualified to be noticed by Lin En. And 10 minutes later, there was the mysterious volcano group millions of kilometers away in the Kyushu territory. The sky was filled with dark clouds, and the sky was filled with darkness. The demon god of the abyss, with his large army, has arrived at the place where Lucifer and other regional demons are hiding. He looked down at the 5 small worlds that existed in the volcano group, and a somewhat proud smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. After killing Lucifer, I can have the 4th law. Just when they came here, Lucifer, who was in the small world of hell, also felt all this for the first time. Abyss Demon God. He opened his tightly closed eyes and looked at the Abyss Demon God high in the sky. When Lucifer saw the Abyss Demon and the large army behind him, his heart suddenly sank, and a sense of uneasiness rose in his heart. The visitor is evil. Lucifer flew out of this small world of hell, and the remaining hundreds of thousands of demons and 5 hell demons followed behind him. The 2 sides faced off in the air. He frowned and said, "What do you want to do?" The Abyss Demon raised one hand, hooked Lucifer, and said at the same time, "Kill you." The next moment, war breaks out. The Abyss Legion and Hell Demons fought together, blood was spilled, limbs were flying everywhere, and wailings were everywhere. Lucifer also fought with the Abyss Demon. The power of 4 laws is constantly impacting. Soon, Lucifer felt deeply powerless, and countless wounds appeared on his body, and his blood flowed as if it was free of money. His strength was severely affected by the battle with Lin En. Now facing the abyss demon god who possesses the law of light, he feels increasingly powerless. Why do you have the law of light? This is obviously the law of the Holy Spirit. Tear. The demon god of the abyss tore off one of Lucifer's arms and said with a sneer. When a completer kills another completer, he can possess the corresponding laws. People in the late era don't even know this. Lucifer, who was seriously injured, understood in an instant. You want to take away the law of darkness from me. You know the consequences of doing this. The abyss demon god looked at Lucifer with more mocking eyes. He tore apart the space, appeared next to Lucifer, reached out and grabbed Lucifer's head in his hands, and said sarcastically. At the end of this game, there is only one winner. After saying this, the abyss demon god looked up to the sky and laughed. And the winner is definitely me. Ha ha ha. Lucifer's face became extremely ugly. All of this happened beyond his imagination. Damn it! I must not die here. How could the abyss demon be so powerful? As Lucifer's despair gradually increased. In his mind, the memory of facing Lin En 1,000,000 kilometers away emerged. Immediately, a ray of hope flashed across his eyes full of despair. That's right. There is still that strong man in this era. Even the abyss demon is definitely not the opponent of that existence. If it is that strong man, no matter what it is, he will definitely be able to do it. Lucifer, who has lived for countless tens of thousands of years, has never placed all his hopes on one person like now. He knew very well that if he stayed here, he would only die. But even if he died, Lucifer would drag the abyss demon with him. The next moment, Lucifer's body was completely wrapped in darkness. The 12 black wings behind him began to shrink rapidly, and the entire space was completely swallowed by darkness. Lucifer's soul broke away from his body. It turned into a black light and rushed towards Xuanhuan at an extremely fast speed. When the darkness dissipated, the abyss demon god finally knew what happened. At this moment, there was only an empty shrunken body in his hand, and the soul of Lucifer inside had disappeared. In this way, he had no way to obtain the law of darkness belonging to Lucifer. The abyss demon god immediately turned his head and looked in the direction where Lucifer had just escaped, and found that it was exactly where his next destination was. He smiled with a somewhat arrogant expression. Lucifer, you can't run away. Just kill the guy who gathered the spiritual energy together. Then, the mighty abyss army approached Xuanhuan. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 304. At the same time, Lucifer appeared at the border of Xuanhuan. He now only had a broken soul left, which was very pale and slowly dissipated between heaven and earth. After escaping with the forbidden technique, he was also dying. He spoke directly, and shouted respectfully towards the interior of Xuanhuan. The strongest of the human race. Lucifer is here to see you. Lucifer did not dare to rush into Xuanhuan, as he could not forget how powerful Lin En was. Even now that he had entered a life and death situation, he did not dare to break into Xuanhuan without Lin En's consent. Thinking of Lin En's powerful strength, his soul could not help but feel waves of fear. This was the only rule he had to follow actively in the countless years he had been in the world. At the same time, Lin En, who was sitting on the top of the tree of life, looked in the direction of Lucifer. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Come in." A few seconds later, Lucifer's increasingly fragile soul appeared beside Lin En. Lin En was a little surprised to see Lucifer's miserable appearance. What happened? Lucifer's soul smiled bitterly and said, I have something to tell you. Lin En nodded slightly, signaling Lucifer to continue. Lucifer told Lin En all the truth about the so-called completer plan that he had learned from the abyss demon. Lin En was also a little surprised to hear the truth. The ultimate goal of the completer plan is to create an existence that controls all the laws of the world. After Lucifer's residual soul finished speaking, he sat on the ground and said weakly, "In addition, I want to ask you for one more thing. To thank you, I will give you my most important thing." Looking at Lucifer, who was about to die, without any fluctuation in his eyes, Lin An said lightly, "What is it?" Lucifer's eyes showed a look of extreme hatred, and he said with hatred, "Kill the Abyss Demon." Lin An nodded lightly. The moment Lucifer came to Zhu, he noticed that a huge breath was approaching Zhu. He replied calmly, "If he comes to provoke me, I will naturally kill him." Huh. Lucifer let out a long breath, and he rarely showed a smile. His soul completely dissipated at this moment. At the same time, a ball of darkness broke away from Lucifer's soul and poured directly into Lin An's body. In an instant, Lin An's grasp of the dark law became more perfect, and many things that he didn't understand before were also integrated at this moment. Kill the so-called complementer. Sure enough, you can get his law. And just 1 minute later, the entire Zhu domain was surrounded by the army led by the Abyss Demon. The surroundings of Zhu domain were covered by Lin An's space law and separated from the original world. The Abyss Demon flew beside the space barrier, looking at this layer of transparent space wall with a serious look. His brows were tightly furrowed, and a very strong surprise flashed in his eyes. He raised his hand and gently touched the space barrier. How could it be? Laws. This space barrier was actually created by the space law. And the power of the space law in his body actually had a tendency to bow its head at this moment. Faced with so many law owners, this was the first time he had seen such a situation. He quickly took his hand back, and the solemnity in his eyes became heavier. His brows were furrowed more and more, and his heart was filled with strong doubts. But soon, the Abyss Demon God adjusted his state. He pressed his palms against the space barrier of Zhu domain, and the power of the space law in his body was running wildly. Boom! The two extremely strong forces of the space law collided with each other, and a huge hole was torn in the space barrier outside Zhu domain. Attack! The Abyss Demon God roared, and then rushed into it first. The Abyss Legion followed closely behind him and launched an invasion of Zhu domain. At the same time, in Zhu domain, Chen Daoming, with his defense force, had already prepared for the battle. The war broke out at this moment. The Abyss Demon God did not join the battle. The moment he entered Zhu domain, he looked at the place where the Tree of Life was. A burst of surprise emerged in his originally solemn pupils. Is this the complement of the law of life? I didn't expect it to be hidden here. After tearing the space several times, the Abyss Demon God appeared where the Tree of Life was. And at this moment, he saw Lin An standing next to the Tree of Life. At this moment, the power of the law of darkness was surrounding Lin An. The Abyss Demon God felt the law of darkness, and he made a judgment in just a moment. Is this the law of darkness of Lucifer? Which era are you from? Why haven't I heard of you? Lin An did not answer the Abyss Demon God. He just looked at the Abyss Demon God with an indifferent expression. He said in a cold tone, "Those who trespass into the Zhu domain, die." The Abyss Demon God's eyes suddenly condensed, and a violent anger instantly formed in his heart. Looking for death. The next moment, the power of the Law of Light surged in the hands of the Abyss Demon God, attacking Lin An. At the same time, on the battlefield at the border of the Zhu domain, countless Zhu domain warriors are fighting with all their strength. They did not reserve any spiritual power. As long as the spiritual power in their bodies is exhausted, it will be quickly filled. Flame, ice, lightning, strong wind. Various elemental forces are exploding at the border of the Zhu domain. But the effect is not very obvious. The average strength of the Abyss Demon army has reached the level of the God of Law. The gap in strength between the two sides cannot be filled by the number of people. Chen Daoming looked at the huge number of Abyss Demon army with a gloomy face, and he punched forward. Boom boom boom. The space collapsed, and several members of the Abyss Demon army died on the spot. So strong. A punch from the semi-god realm can only cause such an effect. Chen Daoming's heart was very heavy, and he looked at the human army that was retreating step by step with a gloomy face. We must use the magic array set up by Lin An and others. Chen Daoming's heart was also a little uncertain. He didn't know whether the magic array that Lin An mentioned, which was a little weak in power, would be useful. He made a decision in his heart, and then closed his eyes directly, using the method taught by Lin An to awaken one of the magic arrays. 9 Heavens Purple Thunder Array. The next moment, dark clouds gathered in the sky. Boom boom. Hundreds of purple lightnings instantly struck the ground. The monster struck by the purple lightning was instantly reduced to ashes. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yi Tiao Xianyue. Chapter 305. Boom. 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 Purple thunder and lightning kept falling, and the monsters in the Abyss Legion were constantly chopped into pieces. Chen Daoming's pupils widened in an instant, and his eyes were completely filled with surprise. Whoops! Whoops! Even his breathing became much heavier involuntarily. He lost his voice and said with a sharp tone. What the hell? Isn't this called relatively weak? Lin An actually said that these formations are less powerful? It's all nonsense. Those enemies, the least powerful ones, are also in the Dharma God realm. This is the Dharma God realm. In any country, one can reach the realm of high-level existence. It's not the kind of cabbage sold at street stalls, where you can do whatever you want. But now these enemies in the Dharma God realm were hacked to death without any resistance. Even if he is a strong man in the demigod realm, a full attack can only kill several such powerful enemies. Let him face so many enemies in the Dharma God realm alone, and there will only be death in the end. Looking at the thunder and lightning that was still falling, Chen Daoming felt even more shocked in his heart. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead with several forehead lines. He raised his hand and wiped the sweat beads vigorously. Gilug. Chen Daoming swallowed hard, licked his dry lips lightly, and said in a very hoarse voice. These formations. It's so scary. However, although this 9 Heavens Purple Thunder formation is very powerful, its power is limited, and those Abyss Demon Lords brought over by the Abyss Demon God have many enemies. Simply relying on a 9 Heavens Purple Thunder formation, it is obviously impossible to resist all these enemies. In the place where the Abyss Demon God sleeps, there are 1,000 small worlds. As the Lord of all Abyss, the number of his subordinates can be said to be endless. Seeing more and more enemies pouring into the Juzhu territory, Chen Daoming quickly came to his senses. He closed his eyes again and began to silently think of the other formations Lin An had given him. The way to awaken the Dharma. The raging flames burn the sky. Amber Dream formation. Mountain of Swords and Sea of Fire formation. There will be no recovery. Dark Invasion Array. For a time, Chen Daoming activated a large number of the formations deployed within the Kyushu region and outside the border. The entire battlefield was completely covered in flames, endless blades flew in all directions, and a dream-like mist enveloped the enemy. More and more enemies died under the attack of the series of formations after they were activated. As a survivor of the fairy era and one of Lin An's loyal followers, Dao Yi naturally joined the battle against the Abyss Demon. Looking at these formations that belonged to their era, Dao froze on the spot with a very dull expression for a moment. The black and yellow mother sword in his hand was also stagnant in the body of an impaled enemy. The formation of the fairy era. Is it really that strong? Same. These formations are definitely from the fairy era. Regardless of the formation techniques or attack methods, they are completely the same. But the power? How could it be compared to the formations arranged by powerful powers in the fairy era? So much stronger? And these formations after such an attack? There is no tendency to weaken at all. Instead, the power is gradually increasing? How could this happen? These formations clearly did not have this function in the fairy era. He has seen many formations from the fairy age, but every formation now is much more powerful than the formations from the fairy age in every aspect. Could it be? Suddenly, a terrible idea appeared in Dao Yi's mind. Did Lin improve these formations? As soon as this idea emerged, it quickly occupied his entire mind. The more he thought about it, the more he confirmed his guess. Absolutely. This is the only possibility. Thinking of this, Dai Xuanhuan Mother Sword's hand slowly pulled out the sword, and the sword body was shaking violently with his hand. Then he immediately looked up in the direction of the Tree of Life, where he could clearly feel Lin's aura. On Dao Yi's face, all that remained was the strong longing from the heart, and those eyes were burning with admiration. Lin. It's getting more and more out of reach. Improving a formation is a huge project. Even for the man who is known as the god of formations, it would take at least 3 months to improve a large-scale formation. And even if the improvement is successful, it can only be improved a little. Far from reaching the current level. He had never heard of anyone being able to comprehensively improve so many formations in such a short period of time. Boom. Thinking of this, Dao Yi's legs couldn't help but feel weak, and his body fell to the ground uncontrollably. He spoke with a trembling tone. If Lin An was in the fairy age, then I'm afraid other powerful beings in the fairy age will be eclipsed by his existence. After these formations were fully activated, the warriors of Zhu domain were no longer in a state of retreat. With the help of some auxiliary formations, they all began to desperately kill the invading enemies. The battle situation improved, but it also fell into a stalemate. Neither the Zhu domain army nor the Abyss Demon army could completely defeat the other. In this case, the factors that can determine this war in the end are victory and failure. Only the duel of the highest combat power of both sides remains. And on this ground, when the war broke out, the battle between Lin An and the Abyss Demon God also broke out. The eyes of the Abyss Demon God were full of murderous intent. He looked at Lin An viciously and said cruelly, "Go to hell." The huge law of light emerged from his open hands. The reason why the Abyss Demon used the law of light to attack was purely because he only felt the existence of the law of darkness possessed by Lucifer in Lin An. The law of light and the law of darkness complement each other. After using the law of light to attack, he can force out Lin An's true power. A huge golden light in the sky directly connected the entire world, and Lin An's body was also swallowed up. At the same time, shining blades of light appeared from all directions and stabbed towards Lin An's body rapidly. Facing the attack of the law of light, Lin An did not dodge. His purple eyes were full of coldness, staring at the Abyss Demon mercilessly. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 306. The next moment, in Lin An's body, the power of the dark law began to surge out violently like a wild horse running wild. The endless darkness swallowed up everything around it. The golden light that originally enveloped Lin An was directly dyed black at this moment. Kara! Kara! The sharp blade of light that was retreating towards Lin An's body was directly struck into pieces the moment it was touched by the violent power of darkness. Lin An, who was in the darkness, slowly looked at the dark power that was constantly surging around him. His eyebrows raised slightly, and a look of joy flashed through his pupils. He nodded gently and said, "The power of the law of darkness that I can use now. Part of it is stronger than before. It seems that the completer also has a certain effect on me. The law of darkness that Lin En mastered was already powerful and terrifying. After receiving Lucifer's self-sacrifice, the law of darkness became even better. Become a bit stronger. At the same time, the abyss demon god floating opposite Lin En did feel a wave of confusion. He frowned, and those two fierce eyes were full of confusion and astonishment. The hands that were constantly releasing the law of light also stopped stiffly in mid-air, and the power of the law of light was no longer released. Even his mind instantly turned into chaos. How could this happen? The law of light taken from the Holy Spirit. Facing Lucifer's dark law. No resistance at all? How is that possible? The law of light and the law of darkness complement each other, and Lucifer and the Holy Spirit are both completers. The duel between these two laws must cancel each other out, and there is no absolute winner. But now, what's going on? How could his law of darkness be so powerful? Even far beyond the law of light he mastered. Even if the law of darkness originally possessed Lucifer, it would never be able to do such a thing. When the abyss demon god saw Lin En for the first time, he had already determined in his heart that the law of darkness surrounding Lin En was taken from Lucifer by him. His judgment about Lin was that Lin was a complementer who had been hiding and never showed up. Under this preconceived idea, the abyss demon god could not figure out why Lucifer's law of darkness could so powerfully crush the Holy Spirit's law of light. And at this moment, the endless power of the law of darkness, which seemed to swallow up the entire world, dispersed instantly. Lin En, who was not even slightly injured, emerged from the pure black world. He looked at the demon god of the abyss with extremely cold eyes, with unreserved killing intent in his eyes. Lin En raised a hand, pointed at the abyss demon god with his finger, and said with contempt in his tone. Is this the law of light you have? So weak. After hearing Lin En's words, the face of the abyss demon became even more ferocious in an instant. The shock in his heart was also left behind by him. He was breathing heavily, his chest rising and falling. Snort. It's too early for you to be proud. It's just a special method to defeat the law of light. But the moment he finished speaking, Lin En shook his head with an indifferent expression, opened his lips, and said coldly. Let you see. The true law of light. What it's like. When the abyss demon god heard these words, he couldn't react for a moment. What did Lin mean? What? Let him see what the real law of light looks like. But the law of light is in his hands. Only he can use the law of light. But in the next moment, the law of darkness around Lin completely disappeared. Instead, bunches of golden light appeared, instantly occupying the space around Lin En. The golden light spread quickly, occupying half of the sky in less than a blink of an eye. The demon god of the abyss widened his eyes and looked at the golden light that filled the sky with disbelief. The power fluctuations emitted from it were no different from the law of light that he controlled that originally belonged to the Holy Spirit. He couldn't help but take a deep breath. Impossible. Is this actually the law of light? How is that possible? How could anyone else master the law of light? Ming Ming, the one who completes the law of Ming Ming light. There is only the Holy Spirit. At the same time, the golden light that occupied the sky turned into thousands of bright golden spears, and the sharp end was pointed directly at the demon god of the abyss. Laugh! 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 These countless golden spears were like a violent storm, stabbing towards the demon god of the abyss. The abyss demon god, who was in a state of shock, also came back to his senses at this time. He looked at these countless golden spears and immediately mobilized the power of the law of light in his body again. The law of light formed layers of thick protective walls that were tens of meters long, blocking the front of the abyss demon god, facing the countless golden spears. Boom! 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 The next moment, the power of the two laws of light collided with each other, and Lin En's golden spear pierced the shield. Crack! 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 The light shield was shattered by the powerful force after only defending for less than 3 seconds. It turned into countless light quanta and disappeared in this world. So far, Lin An's light spear did not dissipate, but continued to pierce the Abyss Demon God. At the moment when the light shield was shattered, the source of the power of the Abyss Demon God was also greatly affected. Puff! He suddenly spit out a mouthful of blood from his mouth, and his face was also covered with a shocked expression. There were bloodshot in his pupils, and the whole person looked crazy. He raised a hand and covered the corner of his mouth that was bleeding. This guy. Who is he? Not only is the law of darkness stronger than Lucifer's. It's fine if he can master the law of light. But even the law of light is so powerful? They are both using the same law of light. But the gap between them is like the gap between heaven and earth. The power of the law of light possessed by the Holy Spirit is as fragile as a piece of paper in front of his law of light. How is it possible? How did he do it? Even those eternal powers would never be able to do this. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 307. And while the Abyss Demon God was stunned, Lin An's golden spears continued to move forward. At this moment, we are infinitely close to the front of the Abyss Demon God, with only about 10 meters left. The Abyss Demon God finally came to his senses. He frowned and looked at the golden spear that was about to hit him. Although he could feel the powerful power fluctuations on the golden spear, the Abyss Demon God was not worried in his heart. Call. He took a deep breath, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and then slowly stretched out his hand to touch the surrounding space. At the same time, he said in a ferocious tone, "Your power is indeed mysterious. But that's all. These attacks have no effect on me. Because I am the completer of 3 laws." The moment the words fell, the hand of the Abyss Demon God tore hard, and a space channel appeared directly. He drilled directly into the crack in this space. As Lin An looked at the rapidly closing space channel, a sneer slowly appeared at the corner of his mouth. Madness. Even if you escape to the ends of the earth, it's of no use. The next moment, the Abyss Demon God appeared in the sky above the Kyushu territory, which had been turned into a battlefield. He looked down at the chaotic battlefield below, where death and injury occurred all the time, and his tense heart finally relaxed. The moment he appeared here, his eyes were attracted to the formations under the ground. Seeing the powerful power of that formation, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and said in a rather unexpected tone, "The power of these formations is so powerful. I didn't expect that in this last era, there would be so many capable people." The Abyss Demon God found that he had underestimated the last era of this world. Soon, the Abyss Demon God withdrew his gaze from the ground. He looked in the direction of the Tree of Life, preparing to use all his strength to kill the Tree of Life after Lin An's attack was over. After obtaining the Law of Life, he temporarily retreated. After he became stronger, he would attack the Kyushu territory again. Boom! 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 But at this moment, all the space in the sky above his head was shattered in an instant. The Abyss Demon God subconsciously raised his head and looked at the sky. When the space in the sky was shattered on a large scale, the golden spears formed by Lin An's Law of Light, as numerous as stars, broke out crazily from the broken space. Directly hit the Abyss Demon God below with a critical strike. At the same time, Lin An also walked out of this broken space. The Demon God of the Abyss looked at all this, with a buzzing sound in his mind, and waves of dizziness echoing around him. The bloodshot eyes in his eyes became brighter and brighter, and even his 2 arms were shaking uncontrollably at this moment. Waves of intense fear were quickly occupying his heart. The Demon God of the Abyss screamed, his tone was out of control. "Empty, space, law of space. Horrible, it's so scary. He actually knows the laws of space? Such a mysterious power can no longer be regarded as a human being. He is definitely not, a member of the Complementers. Must leave quickly. You can't confront him head-on. Otherwise, you will definitely die here. The Abyss Demon God has lived for such a long time and has killed countless powerful people. And this was the first time that he felt a deep sense of powerlessness in front of someone, as if he was like a helpless person. Gilug. He swallowed hard in his stomach. He raised his trembling hand and touched the space beside him, wanting to tear the space apart again and stay away from the Kyushu territory that had become a forbidden area in his heart. But at this moment, Lin En, who was in the sky, looked at the Abyss Demon God with cold eyes. A mysterious light flickered in his purple eyes, and he said in a cold tone, "Confinement." Although Lin En's voice was not loud, the Abyss Demon God still heard it. He didn't pay much attention at first and just continued to do his own thing. He waved his hands vigorously, but everything was in vain. The hands of the Abyss Demon God only dispersed bursts of air currents, but even a space crack the size of a grain of rice was not torn open by him. After realizing the strange state he was in, the Abyss Demon suddenly realized what the meaning of those two words Lin En just said was. His hands that were waving to tear apart the space stopped momentarily, and both arms were trembling at an extremely fast frequency from the shoulders to the tips of the middle fingers. There was only shock on his face, and goosebumps all over his body appeared crazily at this moment. Forbidden, forbidden, law of confinement. Another law. The fourth type? He has already demonstrated the power of the fourth law. How is that possible? He is not a completer. How come there are so many laws? Even those great powers from the oldest era had to practice for many years if they wanted to possess a law. How on earth did this guy do it? Is he really human? Unable to tear apart the space and evade, the Abyss Demon God could only stand there passively, waiting for Lin's attack to come. And at the next moment, the falling speed of these countless golden spears became faster. Laugh! 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 One after another, the golden spears penetrated into the body of the Abyss Demon God. Ah! The Abyss Demon God let out bursts of painful roars. In addition, more golden spears pierced into the ground. On the ground in the Kyushu territory, there are still a large number of soldiers of the Abyss Demon army. At this moment, golden spears pierced directly into their bodies from the air. Boom! Boom! There were bursts of roaring sounds. The bodies of these soldiers of the Abyss Demon army exploded into countless pieces. In just an instant, millions of enemies completely lost their life breath. And the warriors from the 9 provinces territory were all standing on the same spot at this moment, raising their heads and looking at the golden spears filling the sky. Seeing each of the enemies dying before their eyes without any resistance, the warriors from the 9 provinces territory couldn't help but shout. Very good. Master Lin takes action. These damn guys are finished. At the same time, Chen Daoming slowly raised his head and looked at Lin En in the air with complicated eyes. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yi Tiao Xian Yue. Chapter 308. Chen Daoming looked straight at Lin En's figure in the sky. At this moment, Lin was floating in the sky, the clothes he was wearing swaying in the wind. Beside him, countless bright golden rays of light emerged, illuminating the entire sky and turned it golden. Seeing Lin En's appearance, Chen Daoming couldn't help but feel a touch of high respect in his heart. At the same time, he only felt extremely peaceful in his heart, as if the crisis of the enemy's pressure had been completely resolved. Call. After opening his mouth and taking a long breath of the depression in his heart, Chen Daoming's face turned into a smile, and he said with a sigh. Luckily in this world, Lin exists. He is too strong. It can be said to be invincible. In his heart, Lin En has been placed in this highest position. Over the years, he has met countless strong men and countless geniuses. But I have never seen someone like Lin En, whose talent is comparable to that of a god, and whose strength is higher than all living beings. Just Lin. Only Lin. Only then are you qualified. Sitting in the highest position in his heart. Those golden spears only began to dissipate after bombarding them for 10 seconds. These countless golden spears turned into numerous quantum of light and merged into the vast world. And when the light dissipated, the situation on the ground was also exposed. Corpses. There are countless dense corpses. Each corpse belongs to the Abyss Demon army. There are densely packed holes as big as the mouth of a bowl that have been penetrated. It looks like purgatory. The soldiers of the Jiuzhu region also saw the enemy's numerous casualties in their eyes at this moment. Suddenly, a numbscalp feeling appeared on every soldier. Damn, Master Lin is actually so powerful. It's too strong, these damn enemies can't handle it. Lord Lin is mighty. Long live Lord Lin. Among the many corpses of the Abyss Demon army, there was still a tall figure standing without falling. He is clearly the demon god of the abyss. At this moment, there are many holes in his body, and a large amount of blood is constantly flowing out of those holes. But despite being so seriously injured, the abyss demon god still did not die. He just stared at Lin En in the sky with his eyes widened, his pupils filled with intense fear and astonishment. The skin and clothes of the abyss demon god were dyed blood red at this moment, as if he had been soaked in a blood pool for a long time. He raised his hands to cover the wounds, and used the power of space laws to forcibly stop the blood from flowing down. How is it possible? How on earth did he do all this? All this. None of them comply with the rules. Even that adult. There is no way to get the laws that others have. How could happen? So many repetitive laws? The demon god of the abyss became increasingly confused and confused. Everything that happened in just a few minutes completely overturned his cognition. He felt as if his long years had been in vain. And at this moment, Lin En, who was staying in the sky, moved. He lowered his head and looked at the dumbfounded abyss demon god on the ground with an indifferent expression, and a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. The next moment, Lin En took a step toward the sky in front of him, and his entire figure disappeared from the sky. When Lin appeared again, he was already in front of the abyss demon. He stood directly in front of the abyss demon god and said in a cold tone, "You can't run away." Boom. After saying that, Lin didn't give the abyss demon god any time to respond and directly punched the abyss demon god hard in the stomach. With this punch, Lin used the law of power. Boom. The body of the abyss demon god was instantly shot to the other end of the Kyushu territory like a missile, and was heavily embedded in a mountain. The mountain exploded instantly and turned into countless rubbles. After this attack, all the bones in the abyss demon god's body were shattered by the impact, and the teeth in his mouth also fell off. Call. The demon god of the abyss was breathing hard, his chest was rising and falling violently, his pupils were dim at the moment, and his heart was as grey as ashes. Force, the law of power. Law. Another new rule. Why do his laws seem to be endless? You were too reckless this time, you shouldn't have messed with him. The strength of Lucifer and the Holy Spirit is far inferior to him. Although the abyss demon god found it incredible that Lin En possessed so many laws, he was not surprised when the laws of power appeared. His heart has become a lot numb because of Lin. No matter how many new laws appear in Lin's body, he will not find it incredible. The abyss demon used all his strength to quickly regulate the unstable injuries in his body. His brows were wrinkled into a shape, and his eyes were glaring at Lin En. He bit his upper and lower gums hard, and said viciously in an almost crazy way, "You can only show your identity and survive from this guy." At this moment, Lin En also tore the space again and rushed to the location of the abyss demon. The battle between Lin En and the abyss demon was seen by the Tree of Life, who was also a law complementer like the abyss demon. She had originally made plans to use the power of the law of life to heal Lin En at any time. But at this moment, she was shocked to find that her accumulated power of the law of life had no use at all. At this moment, she just stared blankly at the place where the Abyss Demon was. The embarrassed appearance of the Abyss Demon caused a huge impact on her heart. Countless leaves fluttered from the branches of the Tree of Life and fell to the ground. The completer of the 3 laws. Is he being beaten by Lin En? That's the completer of the 3 laws. Every completer can be said to be the darling of the times. A completer who only possesses 1 law has the most powerful power in the world. Not to mention, the completers who can obtain the laws used by other completers. Their strength will only be stronger. But Lin En actually let a completer of the 3 laws have no power to fight back. Unbelievable. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 309. After opening the space channel, Lin En crossed a very long distance in an instant and appeared in front of the Abyss Demon God. He looked at the Abyss Demon God calmly with a look without any emotion, as if the Abyss Demon God was just a lamb to be slaughtered. At this moment, the Abyss Demon God also broke free from the mountain, and the wounds on his body were healing at a rapid speed. Even the blood that flowed out scabbed and dried up, and everything seemed to be moving in a good direction. He looked at Lin En, frowned tightly, and spit out a broken tooth from his mouth before asking Lin En, "What? Do you have to kill me?" Lin En looked at the Abyss Demon God, and when he saw that he didn't look very worried, his eyebrows couldn't help but rise slightly, and at the same time, a faint doubt rose in his heart. He didn't quite understand where the confidence of the Abyss Demon God came from. But he still said, "What else?" The next moment, the Abyss Demon God directly answered, "You'd better not kill me. Otherwise, you will face a scene that is 10,000 times or 100,000 times more terrifying than now." Lin En's expression did not change at all. He slowly said, "So, are you threatening me?" As Lin En said this, a powerful killing intent also burst out from his body. It seemed that the killing intent was so strong that it was about to condense into substance, and it instantly swallowed up the Abyss Demon God. In an instant, the forehead of the Abyss Demon God was covered with cold sweat. The pores all over his body began to expand uncontrollably, and the wound that had stopped bleeding began to bleed again. He felt like he had fallen into a bottomless abyss of terror, and a sense of fear he had never experienced before quickly occupied his heart. The Abyss Demon tried to raise his hand to wipe the sweat off his forehead, but he found that he couldn't do it at all. Murderous intent. How could this happen? How many people did he kill? The murderous intent was so strong. Even back then, when he faced many hostile complementers, his body was not as shocked by the murderous intent as it is now, and he couldn't control it. And even the giant behind him couldn't have such a huge murderous intent. He had never been so scared before. Whisper. 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 It was not until a few seconds after being swallowed by this murderous intent that the Abyss Demon was somewhat adapted. He was panting violently to relieve his soul that was gradually losing consciousness. At the same time, he immediately spoke to Lin En in a hurried and trembling voice. "No. You can't kill me. You absolutely can't kill me. The person standing behind me is one of the oldest completers. The reason why I robbed other people's laws is just to follow that person's orders. If you kill me, I will come to you in person after waking up in this era. By that time, you will be completely finished. You are indeed very strong now. But compared with that person, there is still a big gap. If you kill me now, you will be courting death." When the Abyss Demon said this, a strong fear appeared on his face. Lin En, who was standing not far in front of the Abyss Demon, saw the reaction of the Abyss Demon. He understood in an instant that the Abyss Demon was not making up stories in order to survive. Because the fear on the face of the abyss demon was completely from the deep fear in his heart. Lin An frowned slightly, and a hint of solemnity flashed in his eyes. Is the man you are talking about very strong? The abyss demon god immediately widened his eyes and hurriedly replied. Yes. He is terribly strong. He is one of the 4 oldest completers. Even the person who formulated the completer plan was killed by the 4 of them. Gurgle. Having said this, the abyss demon god swallowed the saliva in his mouth and spoke again. So you'd better not kill me. Otherwise, he will come to you in person. After saying this, the abyss demon god's eyes once again stared at Lin En. He was waiting for Lin En to make a concession. But at this moment, Lin En nodded gently and said again. I know. You can die now. The abyss demon god's heart sank suddenly, and his expression became extremely stunned at this moment. What? You still want to kill me? Is he crazy? Knowing that such a terrible thing would happen, he still did such a thing? Seeking death. He was simply seeking death. The next moment, Lin En appeared in front of the abyss demon god and said in a cold tone. You invaded my world, so you must die. No matter who is behind you, you can't change this result. Even if he comes to seek revenge on me, it's nothing more than killing one more person. The abyss demon god looked at Lin En, and he didn't know what to say for a moment. But in his mind, he felt dizzy and suffocated because of the huge pressure. You. The whole body of the abyss demon god was shaking violently, and his face turned pale. Why is he so arrogant? That's the oldest completer. Even the ancient power who made this plan was killed by the oldest completer. But he is not afraid at all. Suddenly, a particularly terrible thought emerged in the mind of the abyss demon god, and he held his breath completely in an instant. Could it be? Could it be that he still has more powerful power? A power that is enough to make him confident and say such words? Even the means to deal with the oldest completer? And at this moment, a small black dot appeared in one of Lin An's eyes. Then the dot spread rapidly, filling the entire eye. One black eye and one purple eye, the silver wheel of heaven in the body rotated rapidly. Lin An once again entered the heavenly Dao mode. A breath like the might of heaven filled Lin An's body. He looked at the motionless abyss demon god in front of him, and the breath of collapse emerged in the dark eye in an instant. Collapse. To deal with a powerful law complementer like the abyss demon god, only the power of collapse can be used to completely wipe it out. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yi Tiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 310. When Lin An said the word collapse, everything he looked at began to collapse rapidly. Countless spaces collapsed and shattered, the entire mountain instantly turned into countless dust, and even the light shining in the sky collapsed and dissipated. Half of the head of the abyss demon god was swallowed up by the force of collapse in that moment, and exploded in an instant. He subconsciously used his own strength to repair the injury immediately, but it was of no use. There is no way to make up for the injuries of the abyss demon god, and the damage caused by the power of Honkai is irreversible. Hiss. The abyss demon took a breath of cold air, and all the hairs on his body stood up at this moment. His body stood on the ground, trembling uncontrollably. Collapse. Collapse. The power of Honkai impact. How could this happen? He is obviously just a human being. It is simply impossible to have the power of law and the power of collapse at the same time. These are two completely opposite forces. It's impossible to appear in the same place. These two forces are real mortal enemies. In the countless years from the beginning of the world to the end, there has been no existence that can control the law and the power of collapse at the same time. Unless the power of that person, already separated from the source of power in this world. But from ancient times to the present, no one has been able to do it. Whoops. Whoops. The demon god of the abyss panted extremely quickly, as if he was having an asthma attack. His mind was in chaos. The knowledge he had gained over countless years was completely overturned the moment he saw Lin An using the power of Honkai Impact. But at this critical moment of life and death, he didn't have time to think about too many other things. The abyss demon god gritted his teeth tightly, and lines of blood were squeezed out from his gums. Even the remaining gum was instantly congested and covered in blood. He has entered an extremely crazy state. No. I can't die like this. Even if I die, I will drag them to be buried with me. The next moment, the abyss demon god suddenly raised his head and roared loudly at the sky with all his strength. The abyss is coming. As soon as he finished speaking, all the power in the abyss demon god's body was drained out in an instant, and there was not a drop of spiritual energy left in his body. At the same time, deep in the Pacific Ocean, in the seemingly bottomless abyss, 10,000 small abyss worlds disappeared in an instant, and when they reappeared, they were already in the sky above the Kyushu territory. Among these 10,000 small abyss worlds, there are countless demons, and these demons all belong to the people of the abyss demon god. The demon god of the abyss looked at Li Tao and said weakly to Lin En, "Let's all die together. Self-destruct." After finishing speaking, he raised a hand and quickly guided half of the spiritual energy in the small world into a state of explosion. Then he was ready to raise his other hand and control the remaining 5,000 small worlds. But at this moment, Lin An's eyes were fixed on the body of the abyss demon god. At the same time, the power of collapse that could destroy everything enveloped the body of the abyss demon god. Bang! In an instant, the body of the abyss demon god completely collapsed and disappeared from the world, leaving only half of his head. But even the remaining half of the head is disintegrating and dissipating at a speed visible to the naked eye. But the demon god of the abyss did not even have time to react before he became like this. He only succeeded in detonating 5,000 of the small worlds in the sky. He screamed in disbelief. I'm going to die. The Honkai power he possesses. So powerful. No wonder he. Dare you say something like that? It turns out that he really has strength. After only having time to think about it in his mind for less than a second, the head of the abyss demon god completely dissipated into the world. Boom! 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 At the same time, the 5,000 small worlds in the sky that were selected by the abyss demon god also began to collapse in an instant. Lin frowned and raised his head, looking at the other 5,000 intact small worlds. When Lin An saw these 5,000 small worlds, he had already seen them thoroughly. Although the amount of resources contained in it cannot be compared with those of Lucifer's small worlds, there are still some, which is better than nothing. What a pity. Only 5,000 left. After Lin An sighed with some regret, he directly raised his hand and pointed it at the sky. A mysterious luster flashed in his purple eyes. The power of space law can be applied instantly. The next moment, those 5,000 small worlds were transferred directly to the Kyushu territory, floating above the Tree of Life. Boom! Boom! The remaining 5,000 small worlds exploded together at the same time, and everything in them was destroyed and turned into debris at this moment. The explosion of 5,000 small worlds directly swept the entire world. Except for the Jiuzhu region, which was protected by Lin An's space barrier and various formations, other places were strongly affected. The Earth, which was already in the second spiritual energy recovery, began to run wild again, and the speed of the Earth's expansion was increased many times at one time. The disaster that had originally subsided appeared again, and it became more serious than before. Countless volcanoes erupted, and magma went straight into the sky. The ocean rolled on the sea, swallowing the clouds in it. Earthquakes occurred frequently all over the world, and the terrain of the world was changing rapidly. But in the Jiuzhu region, it was not affected at all. The war with the Abyss Demon Army also stopped at this moment. The Abyss Demon army could no longer feel the life breath of the Abyss Demon God at this moment, and they couldn't believe it. How is it possible? Lord Abyss Demon, he was killed. No way, Lord, he is the complement of the three laws. There are even more powerful beings in this world now. Too scary. At the same time, the warriors of Zhu also learned the news. Suddenly, the whole army was excited. Brothers, Lord Lin An won. He once again led us to defend our homeland. Long live Lord Lin An! Long live Lord Lin An! Long live Lord Lin An! At this time, Lin An, whose eyes returned to normal again, had crossed the space and returned to the Tree of Life. At the moment when the Abyss Demon was killed just now, the three laws possessed by the Abyss Demon entered Lin An's body.